I was thinking, it's been well over a decade that Airbnb has been my first and only choice if I've needed somewhere to stay. A few videos back, I did a video about a disappointing stay at an Airbnb. And many of you said things like you'd given up on Airbnb, Airbnb's a lottery. You mentioned you cancelled your Airbnb account. You also travel with a box of supplies like I do. You shared similar experiences where there was no frying pan, no chopping board and things like that. You mentioned also having no cleaning supplies despite having to leave the place spotless when you leave. And I thought you was actually being a bit harsh, and I even defended Airbnb. Obviously, I'd had some not so good Airbnb experiences, but on the whole, as I said, it's over a decade, the experiences have been, on the whole, good and actually great. Some of them have just been fantastic. So I thought, oh, come on, it's not that bad. You can't give up on all of them just because a couple of bad experiences. But I am beginning to think that you were probably right. So recently I've stayed in a few more Airbnbs and I am left questioning whether I want to use it anymore, and more I'm thinking you really did probably have a good point. And to be honest, I'm not even sure what it is. So as I said, my over a decade of great experiences on the whole with Airbnb were all in the UK. So I was thinking, I'm not sure, is it that in the UK they're better, or is it just that this is Airbnb in 2026 and have the same standards fallen in the UK? I don't know, but yeah, some of the things you said were things like there's the issue with obviously landlords and property owners, really started doing Airbnb on a big scale. So there's no attention to detail. No, it's just, as many of you said, it's just a big money-making exercise. And then there's the people that, to be honest, I think their heart's in the right place, but they just have no idea about hospitality and customer service and what people actually need. They're thinking about their own needs and don't realise that people are staying in places and travelling for all kinds of different reasons. I know one of you mentioned in the comments, some of you are hosts, and when you described your Airbnbs and how you host, you actually sound like a dream, and you really have got it right. I know one of you mentioned that you used to have Airbnbs and your target market was travelling nurses who obviously are going to be working long shifts, are going to be tired. Their place needs to be right. And from the comments, I think what you're saying is the places just aren't functional. So you'd mentioned there's no bedside tables, no bedside lamps possibly, nowhere to put your toiletries and your things in the shower, no hooks, no shelves. And everything what you was describing was basically they're not functional. And I don't know whether people think, oh, people are just staying for a couple of nights and are eating out. I just don't know what it is, because also I did mention in the video when I was talking about my bad Airbnb experience that I have been a host myself and was a super host for many years. And one of the people that stayed at one of the bookings at one of my places was a couple that had come down to London because their daughter, only in her 30s, was having open heart surgery. And they came to stay along with their daughter when she came out of hospital. I mean, imagine that. You're providing accommodation for someone that is just out of hospital with open heart surgery. And they had left a 5-star glowing feedback to say that everything was just there that they needed. Functional. now I'm realising it was functional. They said whenever we thought all we could do with or we might need, they'd open a cupboard or open a drawer and it was there. And they said what that meant was they could just concentrate on their daughter. So I use that as an example because you don't know who is booking your accommodation, why they are staying. Not everybody is on holiday. So these Airbnbs that I stayed in recently weren't terrible. I tell you what, another thing you mentioned was that when you have to do your own cleaning, and honestly, as I said, over 10 years, I have never stayed in an Airbnb where they expect you to clean it after, but one of them I booked did. And this is another thing, they didn't say this in the listing, it was only after you booked, you know, when you get obviously your guest details and extra information after you book, that it then said that you need to clean the apartment. I mean, what is that all about? That is horrendous. And I'm just speechless, to be honest. I can't even speak. I can't even articulate it because, so when you clean a place, when I clean an apartment, it takes me a good few hours. I mean, you have got to clean it from top to bottom as if you are cleaning up after a crime scene so that there is no evidence of the previous guests, in my opinion. And so as a guest, am I really going to spend a few hours cleaning the place before I'm travelling? I've got things to do. I had to leave at like 7 in the morning. I mean, do I clean it the night before? I've got a dog and then I've got to make sure there's no dog hairs anywhere the next morning. I'm sorry if he shed a few. I just don't get to what standard are you supposed to clean, because I always clean up after myself. But if you do just clean up after yourself clean, that is not good enough a standard for someone who is charging people to stay in their place for the next person. You still would obviously have to come in and clean to a professional standard afterwards. So if you're going to do that anyway, you're just going to go over the cleaning that I've already done. I just don't get the purpose of it. So this was, this had a kitchen, a living room, a bedroom and a bathroom. You cannot clean that to the standard that is needed for the next guest in half an hour before you leave in the morning. So if you can't, then how can you be expected to spend a couple of hours cleaning? But I'm sorry, I'm just, you can hear I can't even articulate this properly. Perhaps you can tell me. I don't get it. You either clean properly from top to bottom for the next guest, or I don't know. Anyway, and it wasn't cheap. This one wasn't cheap. This one was the most expensive one as well. And then there was another one I stayed in that, honestly, the host had thought of everything. The place was tiny. It's the tiniest place I've ever stayed in, but this was a very thoughtful host. So she'd put in her sort of guest information that little things like oh, if you need to do a bit of hand washing, there's some hand washing soap, in the bathroom cabinet, and to hang up to dry, there's a little mini dryer that you can hang up over the bathroom door, which was amazing because, as I say, this place was the smallest place I've ever stayed in. But she'd obviously thought, well, what if guests, just need to wash something? The kitchen, the tiniest kitchen I've ever experienced in my life, but she had everything, which is ironic because if you saw my last video, you'll know. But the last video where I was telling you about the Airbnb that I was unhappy with and I was leaving early because I just couldn't take it anymore, it was set up for bookings for long term because I'd booked there for a month stay, and there's a box that you can tick in Airbnb to say, yes, your accommodation is suitable for long stays. So you'd obviously expect that to mean equipped kitchen. And it did say in the listing the kitchen was equipped, because that's something that I look for. But it was undescribable, this kitchen. Whereas this recent Airbnb, the smallest kitchen I've ever stayed in, she had everything. Bottle opener, decent utensils. I mean, she had probably about, we'll come on to that, potato peeler, grater, colander, various different sized saucepans. And this isn't, this is going to sound like a whinge and a moan, but it isn't. But although the kitchen was really well equipped, it kind of then went to the other end of the scale, because this kitchen was so tiny, and she did kind of like utilise the space really well to fit everything in. But at this Airbnb that I did the video about, there were no utensils. Can you imagine? There was cutlery, but there were no kitchen utensils. Can you imagine staying somewhere for a month and you've actually got no utensils? Like a spatula, a serving spoon, those sort of things. Well, this tiny Airbnb, it literally had about 3 of each. 3 spatulas, 3 big serving spoons, different kinds of spatulas. And I thought, yeah, this is great, but now this is overkill, and it just meant it was just a little bit cluttered. I'd rather that than not, but it was just funny how I'd gone from one extreme to the other, and that the extreme of the well-equipped kitchen was the tiniest kitchen I've ever stayed in. It's just bizarre. The other thing one of you said was that it is like a lottery, and I think for me that's the biggest problem, is that you just never know what you're going to expect. So this Airbnb that I talked about in my previous video, although it didn't have anything, it wasn't a problem for me, because I'd been on the road for about 3 months, and I knew I was going to be on the road for several months. So I have my little box of kitchen utensils. I travel with my Instapot mini, a couple of tea towels, because that's another thing. Places never have hand towels and tea towels in the kitchen, and I think, do people not wash their hands? So they'd have a bath towel, your bath towel that they normally put on the bed, but there'd be no towel in the kitchen. I think, before you cook, do you not wash your hands? So if you wash your hands, where do you dry them? So I travel with that. So it wasn't a problem, because I had everything with me. But it's just not knowing what you're going to get. So I've just recently bought a rooftop tent, and it's not because I just suddenly fancied being a camper. It's because I'm really losing confidence in finding in places to stay, and sometimes I just need somewhere to sleep for the night. So obviously the tent isn't a solution, because you're going to want to do things like shower, cook, work, which means I still need accommodation, but it is a great emergency one-night stop, and good for actually long journeys and travelling when I just need to rest. But it's not a solution, and going forward I am wondering, what next? What's the option? If Airbnb is no longer an option, what's the solution? What's the alternative? I know some of you said you've given up on it, so I'd love to hear what you're using now, and if you have found a better alternative and a solution, let me know. Personally, I've never been able to get on with booking.com. I don't know why, I just cannot get along with it. And as you know, if you are not, you've been following the channel and you know about my house sitting, for me, house sitting is the best way for finding out what it's like to live somewhere, to actually be, in the community, in the location, not as a tourist, not as a visitor, but to really experience and find out what a place is like. Oh, excuse me. House sitting is hands down the best solution. Obviously, that doesn't suit everybody. It does come with responsibility, but I just think it's worth it. I think it's worth the payoff. And but obviously, sometimes you just need accommodation, and house sitting isn't the answer. So, what is? And then the thing is, if you're staying somewhere just for a couple of nights, it doesn't matter so much if it's not functional, if things aren't good, if things are missing. It really, you can live with it. It doesn't matter. But if you need it longer term, and if you're on the road for a long time, or if you need an Airbnb for a good amount of time, you need things functional. And as well, if you are constantly moving around and relying on accommodation, if you're a nomad, if you're like me and you're homeless, you haven't got that thing where you think, oh, it's all right, I'll be home soon. You can just put up with things and you look forward to being back home. It's not very nice when you think, oh God, what is the next place going to be like? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be more of the same? It's just not a very nice feeling, and it does leave you with a constant feeling of, not great anxiety, but just that slight anxiety of, oh God, what's the next one going to be like? Like one of you said, it's a lottery. And for long periods and long term, that really is not nice. And it really does also slow you down in what you're doing. You go to cook something and you think, oh, they haven't got this and they haven't got that. The amount of times I've thought, oh yeah, I'm going to do myself some coleslaw or something, and then, oh, there's no grater. Although for me, that's one of the things I bring in my little kit. And the idea of talking about this on this video isn't to just complain about Airbnb. I generally am wondering, am I giving up on it too soon? Is there a way around it, and to make sure you get the accommodation that you need and that's functional? And because what I've realised is it doesn't even necessarily matter the pricing. That doesn't guarantee you a functional, decent place if it's at a higher price point. I don't know. Go into Owners Direct, VRBO, is it? Vacation Rent by Owner. Yeah, I'm not sure how big that is in France. I don't know, different platforms, smaller platforms. And as well, what I've always liked about Airbnb is you can choose something that's more geared to getting away from holiday vacations. Like, there's no point, I'm not attracted to pools and hot tubs and being near tourist locations. Like somebody said, their market was travelling nurses. It's because why I liked Airbnb is because they kind of catered for people that maybe needed accommodation for work, for business, that weren't travelling for holiday and pleasure, which is what I find difficult with some of the other platforms. I mean, even with Airbnb, in some areas, they're, busy showing their lovely pool and their lovely jacuzzi and all the lovely tourist places that are close by. But that's a completely different genre of accommodation, and that's not what I'm after. So I don't know. For those of you who've ditched Airbnb and have found, or if you found a different solution, I'd love to hear. But as I say, I think that is part of it as well, being not holidaying, not wanting a place for luxury and fun, and it being somewhere where you just want to be for a couple of weeks. It's a very different market. Yeah, I think that might be the part of the problem as well. But as I said, that is why I used to find Airbnb so good, because it did cater for the people that don't want all the fancy luxury touristy holiday feel thing. Anyway, let me know what you think. It's good to talk.